Greetings and welcome to the Saco City Council meeting for Monday, February 7, 2022. Call this meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. Reflection of all the councilors present. With that, I'd like to invite you all to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you very much. Under item 4, general tonight, we have item A, or Mayor's Public Health Proclamation. City of Saco Office of the Mayor Community Health Proclamation, whereas COVID-19 continues to impact our community in unprecedented ways as the highly contagious Omicron variant spreads, and whereas Saco businesses continue to struggle with the impacts that employee absences have on services and operations, and whereas Saco schools continue to report numerous students and staffs navigating through the complexities of COVID symptoms, illness, and exposure. And whereas the CDC recommends wearing masks, being fully vaccinated, and boosted when eligible to help mitigate severe illness from COVID-19. Now, therefore, I, William Doyle, Mayor of Saco, encourage the citizens of Saco to take appropriate precautions to mitigate the likelihood of severe illness and continued spread of COVID-19. Signed this 7th of February, 2022. Moving on to item 5, committee correspondence to council. Any committee correspondence at this time? Councilor Purdy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick recap of the planning board meeting. At the February 1st planning board meeting, the board heard public comment on a proposed zoning amendment to reduce the square footage requirement in the downtown district. After the public hearing, a vote was taken which resulted in a 3-3 tie. Where this is a zoning amendment, it will come to council for a final vote sometime in the future with a mixed recommendation. Also, the planning board continued its public hearing on the draft of the comprehensive plan. After the public hearing, an amendment was passed to change the future land use map so that the area west of the railroad tracks would not be considered for possible future expansion of the downtown district. Some other recommendations will also be forwarded to the council, but no other amendments were made. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Purdy. Any other committee correspondence to council? Councilor Hatch.
Thank you, Mayor Doyle. Just to report on the Transit Committee, we had a board meeting on January 27th. There continues to be a great deal of work being done by our new Executive Director, Chad Hyde, working on improving organization governance and decision-making. That's moving ahead very well. They did complete their first successful negotiation. First labor contract was signed and ended in very favorable results, both for the authority and for the union itself, so that was a real positive sign. And finally, they're continuing to sort through some ARPA grant funding applications to see if they can secure some of that money from GP COG, and that is a process that requires application, and that is in process as we speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Hatch. Any further committee correspondence to council? Councilor Berman.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The School Construction Committee continues to meet both to evaluate possible grade configurations of the new schools as well as potential sites. The next public meeting will be on Wednesday, February 16th at 6 p.m. at Fairfield School. That'll be an opportunity to hear about progress in those efforts as well as provide feedback on some of the current options.
Thank you, Councilor Berman. Any further committee? Councilor Johnston.
Thank you. So I don't know if council is aware of this, but we recently had a request to name or honor a ball field over at the Memorial Field after former councilor Arthur Tardif, who recently passed. So that went before the Parks and Rec Advisory Board. There was a lot of discussion. One of the meetings I wasn't present at, but I was at the last one. And I'd say that ultimately the majority decided that there was merit to it and is moving it forward to council with that recommendation. But there was, again, a lot of dialogue about the process and, the lack of one, really. And so, that's something that I suspect would come before us in the future for, some creation of some kind of policy for, how we go about these things. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further committee correspondence to council? Moving on to item 6, public comment. Several folks have signed up this evening. First up, we have Kelly Archer. For those that are coming up, please come forward. State your name and address. You can feel free to remove your mask while at the podium. And then I just ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes.
Hello, everyone. To the mayor, city council, city officials, stakeholders, and citizens of Saco. Who is Saco? Where are we going? Are we becoming a suburb of Portland, or will we remain a quaint and vibrant community and find creative solutions to relieving the residential taxpayers' burden? I am concerned with the constant state of reaction and doing some things backwards. I have questions, and they are, what is Saco's current RCI, residential to commercial to industrial ratios? Please provide those numbers, as a former counselor is stating 80-20% ratio. If that is true, how can we at this time even consider more density downtown or residential growth throughout the city? A residential growth moratorium and/or a growth ordinance may be warranted until the city addresses the multitude of unfinished business issues, being the master plan development, section 1403 contract zones, Bob Hamlin's and Mike Eon's zoning revisions, infrastructure, schools, traffic, turnpike access, WRRD, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Is due process and notifications of public hearings being followed, with the new conditional use in the industrial park to the downtown district petition, which in my opinion, and at this stage, is a petitioner and not an applicant. Therefore, the 200-foot abutter notification of an applicant would not be applicable, and that the entirety of the downtown district stakeholders should be notified of a highly significant and potential zone change with a public hearing coming before this council. I am concerned about many citizens being dismissed or no responses provided to their issues, questions, emails, or calls by some city officials. I am concerned that stakeholders' emails to the City Council or Planning Board are not uploaded under the More tab as subsequent communications, as we know that there are those letters that are included in the packet. However, with the timing of the packet being released 1 to 2 business days before a meeting, many emails are provided after stakeholders have read the packet. Please be proactive and transparent and upload all communications to the appropriate Saco website page before the meeting, perhaps by a 4 p.m. deadline. I am concerned about the number of contract zones that have occurred since fall of 2017. It is my understanding that the formation of the ZORS committee was to reduce the number of districts and to severely reduce the number of contract zones. Could the city please tell me how many contracts we have at present and upload all contract zones to the new city website page? I am concerned with the council agendas, the lack of unfinished business not being addressed, the tabling of items, and the councilors' inability to have their issues placed upon the agendas. I am concerned that a planning board member stated last week on audio, I'm deeply disappointed in the usual attendance of 5 to 7 citizens. I am hoping that this person meant they wanted more citizen participation. I am very concerned with the optics at last public hearing concerning the downtown district petition, whereas the mayor pulled aside the petitioner during the public hearing and conversed directly after the close of the planning board's recommendation regarding the petition, both in the presence of the planning board and citizens. I want to thank the following: many councilors who returned their call to me last week to discuss understanding, collaboration, and good governance going forward. Thank you all very, very much. Most appreciated. Thank you, Councilor Jim Purdy's interpretation of the Roberts Rule of Order with no prevailing side regarding a tie vote at the last planning board meeting. Thank you very much. And thank you to City Planner Jason Garnham and his response to a planning board member last week in regards to unfinished business and the master plan development being placed upon the upcoming agenda. I also want to thank the planner for re-implementing the former planner Emily Cole Prescott's iWork software program to track the many stages of review within the department and integrating the departments for developers and stakeholders' ease of process. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Up next is, I can't read the name, but 259 North Street or 209 North Street? Commissioner Sickard.
My parents said I should have been a doctor. I'm sorry that my handwriting is not legible. I'm Al Sickard, for you who may not know me, 259 North Street. I'm the chairman of the York County Commissioners in Alfred, and wanted to just take a brief moment to let you know that we're in the middle of our ARPA vetting, $40 million. We've allocated about 8. That leaves 32 left. We have about 45 in request. We just turned down another $1 million to York Hospital, who wanted to fill a void left by late payments from the state. The programs were good. They possible will have layoffs, but we feel that ARPA money is not used to fill a temporary budget void. We're trying to go long-term, help as many people in the county as possible. 29 towns to deal with, over 1,000 square miles. The reason I'd like to address Saco tonight is very simply that we still have a $1.8 million project that is being vetted for the dredge, include delivery and also a service boat. I feel that we, with the work of the mayor, Save Our Shores from Camp Ellis, and in particular former Councilor Kevin Roche, are getting close to putting this together. If it was only to benefit Saco, it never would have floated. Well, pardon the pun, it's a boat. It will float. But done correctly, a quasi-governmental board running this and hiring the people and the experts to do the work, we can help York County shoreline into Scarborough, Casco Bay, and I believe not only be sustainable, but possibly turn a profit. So I just wanted to get up that said the board left it for an April vote. We're all working hard behind the scenes. The mayor's been Kevin's been following up with harbor masters up and down the coast. And if we can show my fellow commissioners' support up and down York County into Scarborough and possibly even into Casco Bay, we can get this done. It's not the be-all and end-all for Camp Ellis problems, but we feel it's a start. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and councilors.
Thank you, Commissioner Sickard. Up next is Inga Brown.
Hi, good evening. I'm Inga Brown. I live at 161 Simpson Road, and I am a member of Save Saco Neighborhoods. Good evening. At your November 29th meeting, in a vote of 5-2, you approved funding exploration on the Ecology School left turn lane, and I assume you will be hearing at an upcoming meeting a staff report from staff about this item regarding possible DOT funding mechanisms. I want to clarify for the record and for the public that the meeting item commentary from November 29th, as presented to you in the public, cited outdated 2018 language, and therefore the information you received that evening about the turn lane was out of date. And I would like to correct that record this evening. I do feel that that impeded and created a conversation that evening that was based on outdated information and moved forward a vote on some data that was incorrect. I don't think there was anything purposeful done with that data. I just think it was an oversight. Also, the business partnership initiative, the funding mechanism, as you probably now understand, that is not a 1/2, 50% ratio. It's a 33% or 1/3 for each entity, as Ms. Clavette clarified for you at the November 29th meeting. So what you're really looking at is a 33% cost share, and that is not for $600,000. I think it was Councilor McPhail who had asked the recipient how much is the turn lane. When all of you received July 1st, this past summer, July 1st, from former city planner Hamblin, you received an email, and in that email, the Ecology Schools project manager, their own project manager, cited a cost of $800,000. So just to clarify, you're looking at 33% potentially of that $800,000. I think that works out to about $267,000, just to clarify the record. I also sent you an email, as you probably noticed, and one of those emails contained the schematic for the turn lane. This is information that the city received, I believe, in 2019, and I'm simply trying to document for you that the turn lane was never a back of the envelope item. It was always at the city's purview. It was also reviewed at annual progress updates on the site plan. So this information is very well documented. I also brought tonight my site plan binder. I haven't looked at this for a while, but I brought it. And I just want to clarify that for the traffic study that determined a turn lane was warranted at the intersection of Buxton Road and Simpson Road, Mr. Bray, the traffic engineer, he reported that the warrant for the turn lane is fully met. It is not partially met, it is not borderline, but it is a fully met need for the turn lane. And he also said that because Buxton Road, or Route 112, is a state highway, the plans and construction will need to be reviewed and approved by MDOT. And I really think you have the genesis here for the language that was in the site plan, that the applicant or recipient will work with the city of Saco and the DOT to construct the turn lane. There was never at any time, as Pat Fox reported to you on November 29th, any thought that there would be city financial support for the turn lane. So I just wanted to bring that forward. Lastly, I'm very concerned about this process. You as a council are perhaps voting on a funding mechanism related to a site plan condition, which is under the planning board's purview. The recipient of that site plan has not yet gone back to the planning board to discuss the turn lane update. And I really feel that the ecology school needs to meet its requirements of meeting with the planning board, providing information on the turn lane, providing a funding status, and also to hear from the planning board that the school must keep their programming below the turn lane warrant that is in the site plan condition that was amended on November 3rd, 2020. I would like you all to note that date. I sent you the site plan amendment from November 3rd. It was election day, November 3rd, 2020. I would ask that you review that site plan amendment and the update so that you're fully informed on the requirements for that turn lane. The Business Partnership Initiative, as I'm sure you'll hear from staff in the next coming weeks, in my opinion, is a very poor fit for this funding. If you look at those requirements, It's for economic development, job growth, and at last look, the comprehensive plan was not looking for job growth and economic development in the rural conservation zone. I would hope that at some point I get some answers to the emails that I've sent. I've sent numerous emails, and I just want you all to know I have not received acknowledgement. Hello, we got your email from staff, and I would like some replies and just some simple information about where these items stand. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next is David Plavin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm here tonight to address the council regarding the city goals and discussion of priorities for the city. And I wanted to ask that you maintain your strong support for environmental sustainability and combating coastal erosion. We've made a lot of progress since this was established 2 years ago. We're getting close to finally seeing something from the Army Corps of Engineers. I'm waiting on a final report from Living Shoreline Solutions regarding the use of wave attenuation devices in the bay to help combat the strength of the waves. As Al Sakar just mentioned, we're moving closer to perhaps acquiring a dredge from the county. We have a resolution at the state level to help support you with any Army Corps negotiations. So it remains extremely important that this priority is maintained, if not heightened. I wanted to thank the council, Councilor Berman in particular, but the entire council for its continued support. We've received unanimous votes every time something's come in front of you. City Administrator Cainrath, who's been helping us on a number of fronts, and as well as Pat Fox, who's also been supportive, and of course, the mayor, you've been on this since day one. We can't thank you enough for all the help you're providing us, but we do ask that you once again give us as much of a priority as you can. It's very important. It's tantamount that we have your support so we can continue to move forward, and I think maybe 2 years from now we'll be talking about something else, or hopefully something else. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next is Margaret Mills.
Please tell me if I'm not loud enough or too loud. Margaret Mills, I live at 168 Simpson Road. I'm coming before you to comment on the council considering using city and state funds for an expanded turn lane from Buxton Road onto Simpson Road. It's my understanding that the City Council charged the Ecology School with the expenses and responsibility to create the expanded turn lane onto Simpson Road if traffic from the Ecology School requires it. That is plainly expressed in TES's contract zone. The council had an independent agency monitor the intersection for traffic volume to learn if the expansion was required. The Ecology School has two choices: measurably minimize increased traffic to the intersection, or if the traffic increased to a certain level, create an expanded turn lane from TES funds. I believe the independent monitoring company has measured traffic increases enough to warrant the expanded turn lane. Let me be clear, I personally don't want the expanded turn lane, but I do want the school to keep its promises. Either keep its traffic down or pay for the turn lane as previously agreed. Lately, TES has suggested that they want to use city and state funds to pay for their obligation. One program is through the Municipal Partnership Initiative, and in my letter here, I've quoted pertinent language from the Municipal Partnership website. Essentially, it talks about matching. It's primarily to help with economic development and jobs. And I quote also from the Business Partnership Initiative website. Also, it says supporting economic growth and jobs. And I want to point out that on both of these sites, they say if a municipality borrows money from this agency, they will not get 2 chances to borrow from that agency until all the other municipalities have had their turn. So if we borrow from any of these agencies, receive loan grants from any of these 2 agencies, we are forfeiting money for other pressing issues on our traffic in Saco. The state funds that we're talking about are from my tax dollars, your tax dollars. The city funds come from, guess what? Your tax dollars, my tax dollars. Allowing TES to exist already took significant tax dollars from Saco by turning a private property into a 501c3. Now the school wants more of my tax dollars, more public funds, to support its private nonprofit, a project of the turn lane which it had previously promised to take care of. I don't support using any federal, state, or municipal funds for something the ecology school already promised to pay for. Thank you for considering my questions and for listening to me about this information. I have 2 copies of this I'd like to give to you.
Thank you. Up next is Susan Littlefield.
Hi. My name is Sue Littlefield, 171 Simpson Road, and I'd like to say I fully support looking at processes and improving them in the city, but that's not my topic tonight. I'm a lifetime Simpson Road resident and have attended most of the council and planning board meetings since the ecology school project was initiated. I spoke repeatedly about the inappropriate siting of a facility that would generate substantial traffic. I'd like to restate some of the points about the ecology school and the turn lane. The initial contract zone agreement in 2018, which was pre-COVID, the planning board review of the timeline on November 3rd, 2020, and the most recent council meetings have all confirmed that the turn lane and trip limits were the agreed solution for safe turning and traveling on Simpson Road. The school agreed to this condition and commenced development. TES programming has already surpassed the traffic limit set by the contract zone on occasion during its limited summer programming in 2021. At the November 3rd, 2020 planning board meeting, the school had asked for clarification on when the turn lane needed to be built. The possibility of reducing travel trips by reducing or rescheduling programs was extensively discussed by the planning board members as the only way to delay building the turn lane. The director of the school instead opted to agree to an extended deadline of spring 2022 to start construction on the turn lane, while still emphasizing that they did not have available funds. Not once, to my knowledge, have any councilors or city staff publicly offered to pay for any part of the construction. But now the city is paying for staff time to assist the school in seeking funding, even though Jenkins Road, the Jenkins Road project is top priority. I spent a lot of time reviewing that planning board meeting of 2020 when the new deadline date was set, and I actually transcribed just a brief part of it. It was a very long meeting, so I cut it down to just 2 speakers, but it kind of exemplifies how the discussion went. Chairman Don Gerard also spoke very strongly about the contract zone's requirement to limit trip numbers if they did not want to build a turn lane. But unfortunately, that limit has already been tripped. So I'm quoting from Jeff Brochu. And this is towards the end of the meeting when this one topic's been talked about for about an hour and a half at least. And he says, I understand that the ecology school wants some clarity. This is on the deadline for construction. And from what I understood from Mr. Laveria, once the warrants trip, we're looking at realistically at between 1 and 2 years to be constructed, depending on the time of year. But that puts you at 2022 anyways. And I guess this is probably something that should have been brought up earlier when the whole process was underway. And he's referring to the initial site plan and contract zone. It sounds very clear that the board made it very clear that it viewed it as a condition of approval. And projected traffic counts were going to be such that it had to be built. It was a condition of approval that it has to be built before a certificate of occupancy. If this pandemic hadn't hit, we'd still be sitting here with them ready to open and no left turn. And Mr. Dumpsch replies, we would have built it. I'm sorry, Jeff. We were teeing up with the DOT in February. We're in a global pandemic. We were teeing it up. I'm sorry, but I don't want to be disrespectful. This is totally about doing the right thing, but also acknowledging that we're in a global pandemic. It's affecting all of us in many ways, and we're trying to be reasonable. What Joyce just put out there, that's Joyce Clark making an amendment to the motion. We'll stick to it. I will do my darnest. I will go out there with a tin cup and raise money to buy that turn lane. We'll get it done. You've got our commitment. And if this passes, we're breaking ground. If I could do it May next year, if I can get the money, I would try to do it. I'm just trying to be realistic where we are. This is why we came to you in the first place, that we were teeing it up and all of a sudden we're in a pandemic that is drastically affecting our numbers. Only 20% of summer camps are even open. And if we don't have herd immunity and vigorous vaccination, these types of programs will not happen. I think there was a whole lot of excuses there because the lane should have been done probably before the pandemic started. It should have been in his original budget. But anyway, that's it was a very educational meeting, and I'm glad I looked at it again. And you might want to do that. I'm going to pass out these copies of the letter. Thank you.
Thank you. That is all for those that have signed up. If there's anyone wishing to speak, be recognized, come forward and be heard.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jane Karen, 264 Lincoln Street in Saco. And I just wanted to thank the City Administrator Cainrath and Mayor Doyle for the meeting that you did have with me prior to the holidays. We're all busy. It was right before the holidays. But I did request a meeting, and I appreciate that you did meet with me. It was concerning contract zones and the numbers of contract zones specifically. We had a discussion on those numbers as well as some of the process of contract zones. Mr. Mayor, you did mention that you thought possibly contract zones could be on an agenda item, possibly in February. So it's February 7th, and I'm hoping that before the budget work starts, that we might be able to have that on soon, an agenda very soon. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. If there's anyone else who would like to be heard, come forward.
Robert Biggs, 92 Middle Street. I feel I need to repeat my recent statement to make my concern crystal clear. I was the planning board member who said during the most recent planning board meeting that I was deeply disappointed with the lack of public attendance at most of the many council meetings I've attended over the last 6 years, with the usual suspects of 6 to 9 people. Public involvement and discourse is what makes these meetings, as well as planning board meetings, effective, and I personally would love to see every one of these seats filled every week in standing room only, but I don't normally see that, and that's why I made the statement.
Thank you. If there's anyone else who would like to be heard, please come forward. Seeing nobody, moving on to item 7, approval of the minutes for January 24th, 2022. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Councilor Hatch, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Johnston. Any discussion on the minutes? Roll call vote on the minutes. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yay.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Brings us to item 8, consent items. There are 2 consent items. Item A, application for solid waste permit through Waste Management of Maine. And item B, confirm mayor's appointment to Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee for Chelsea Hill. Is there a motion to approve the consent items?
So moved.
Councilor Berman, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Hatch. Any discussion? Roll call vote. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Consent item passes 7-0, brings us to item 9, which is action items. Item A is a public hearing, final reading for remote meeting policy, page 11 in your packet, and that is Councilor Johnston.
Thank you. In the attached exhibit items, you will see a remote meeting policy that is compliant with LD 32 and captures our current practices for the options of in-person and remote meetings. We have reviewed the policies and practices of several municipalities in addition to LD 32 to draft this policy. This policy is adopted pursuant to MRSA Section 403B, as may be amended to provide a written policy to govern the use of remote means for public meetings by the City of Saco. The conduct of remote meetings by the City Council and remote participation in the City Council meetings shall be governed by this policy. To ensure a consistent application of this policy, the Council intends for its subcommittees and all committees, boards, task force, and subcommittees of the various standing or advisory boards and committees of the City to comply with this policy and approve such policy by an affirmative vote of its members, except for the 3 exceptions identified within the policy. We have prepared a presentation outlining the cost to offer hybrid meetings in the future. This would require a budget amendment at a future meeting. Staff supports the adoption of the attached policy. I move to open the public hearing for the remote meeting policy dated February 7th, 2022.
Motion to open the public hearing has been made by Councilor Johnston. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Archer. Any discussion? Roll call to open. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Passes 7-0. Public hearing's now open at 7:09 p.m. Any member of the public wishing to speak on this item, public hearing for remote meeting policies, come forward and be heard.
I'm Jane Karen, 264 Lincoln Street in Saco. And I read over this final reading, and I am disappointed that I do not see where there will be regular available opportunity for individuals, citizens in the city, to speak through a Zoom platform, this hybrid type platform. Our health proclamation this evening concerning the seriousness of COVID-19 and this Omicron variant, and then also the number of individuals that, personally I know 3, due to medical situations in their family, cannot attend. I encourage them to write emails, but the opportunity for the Zoom option would be very helpful. And there were other citizens that comment about, oh, I would like to be there, I cannot due to family, children, transportation, work, and so forth. So I was disappointed that that doesn't seem to be part of this plan unless it is, I guess, with council member and mayor approval for something different to happen. So I guess it's unclear to me why that option isn't available for all of our citizens, and that's what I wanted to speak on. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public who would like to speak on this issue? Please come forward and be heard.
Hello, Inga Brown, 161 Simpson Road. The information you presented this evening, I apologize. I only had time to skim it, so I did not digest it as fully as I would have liked. But I will say I'm disappointed that a hybrid option is not available, and I'll tell you why. We have all learned to expand our toolbox underneath, due to COVID. And access to school, access to meetings have become flexible, and that's what needs to happen. As a high school teacher, I am currently offering hybrid access to my students who are at home quarantining or with COVID. So if you don't have a high schooler in your life or you haven't been in a high school room for a while, let's tell you how that goes. Most of the students are in the classroom. That's great. That's where we want them. 1 or 2 students are Zooming in. They either have COVID or they're quarantining. This is not for regular illness. This is just for students who are suffering a COVID effect. It is so easy to have people in a room, and it's true the people in the room might have a little more presence, and that's okay. But anybody on Zoom can speak, can let it be known that they would like to add a comment. And it works beautifully. And I'm disappointed that we don't have a hybrid option, at least as this pandemic continues. You have the data that there have been much more public engagement on the Zooms. Ask yourself why. I'm sure you have. As Ms. Karen said, it just makes it easy for people to attend meetings. And I think that's what we want. You want it. Mr. Biggs wants it. We all want it. So I would like to ask that you pause on this final reading or this draft and put our heads together. It's not that hard for one, maybe the city administrator, to have a laptop, and that speaker, if they're on Zoom, can speak through some speakers. It works. I would just ask that you consider it to broaden the dialogue, get more citizens involved. It's so important, and it's really not that hard to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public who would like to speak on this item?
Hi, I'm Kelly Archer, 185 Bradley Street, Ward 5, and I echo everything that Jane Karen and Ingrid Brown have both said. For different reasons and also for COVID reasons, I removed myself from this arena last May. I hesitated coming back because of COVID and my age and whatnot. I do not do a lot of in-person activities. And I'm disappointed also that the Zoom, we already know how to do this. And I think we can get real creative to be able to have the participation of the citizens, of the stakeholders of Saco, to be able to have their voice heard. Because like me, I didn't want to come into this auditorium, and when I was chair of the HPC, I did not want to come back in person, even if it was asked of us to do so. So please reconsider and have the Zoom option available to all, that would be fully transparent and participatory. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments on this public hearing? Seeing no further comments on the public hearing, Councilor Johnston.
Move to close the public hearing and be it ordered that the City Council adopt a remote meeting policy dated February 7th, 2022. Move to approve the order.
Motion's been made by Councilor Johnston. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Archer. Any discussion? Councilor Berman, then we'll go down the line.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a comment and then an amendment. My comment is that upon reading this policy, I share some of the citizens' concerns about hybrid meetings, in-person meetings, and remote meetings. I would also point out and just remind the public that as a council member, I'm liaison to 5 different city committee meetings or boards. Each one meets in a different place with different people. Each one requires public access. Some are in rooms with cameras and speakers. Some are in rooms without cameras and speakers. Some are in the community. Some are in city rooms. Some are chaired by people who are comfortable with technology, and some are not. And in the height of the pandemic, Andrew Dickinson, who right now, sitting right there, was sitting in each of those Zoom rooms to make sure that the Zoom rooms connected, that people could connect, that they could hear each other, that they could speak, and they could see each other. Schools, universities like UNE, and other institutions have cameras and have laptops and have staff and have training. Those things are not available to all the city boards, committees, and commissions, making it quite a challenge. I've sat many, many minutes through meetings where people tried to connect in but could not, or could not hear, or could not speak, and the aggregate time spent on that is formidable. So I would just remind the public that, while it is certainly our goal to encourage as much public participation as possible, there are sometimes some very real costs and challenges in doing so. As for the amendment, I think it's just simply a matter of confusion. On page 12 of our packet, section B, scope. The first paragraph refers to all public meetings of the City Council and boards, committees, and commissions, but the second paragraph refers only to council members. I believe it should also refer to committees. Therefore, I move to amend the second paragraph to read the council or committee members, adding or committee between council and member, are expected to be physically present, except when being physically present is not practicable, including the following circumstances. And that same thing needs to be done under bullet point 1, the existence of an emergency or urgent issue that requires the full council or committee to meet remotely. So I want to add those 2 or committees on page 12, one between the council and members, and the other after the full council in bullet point 1.
An amendment's been made by Councilor Berman to add and committee members, or and committees, or committees, and committee members. After, in paragraph 2, after the council. And also in, you also wanted that in paragraph 1, correct?
That's right. The council and the committee members are expected to be physically present, and the existence of an emergency or urgent issue that requires the full council or committee to meet remotely.
Is there a second to the amendment?
Second.
Second by Councilor McPhail. Any discussion on the amendment only? Amendment only? Roll call vote on the amendment only. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
The amendment passes 7-0. Back to the main motion as amended. Councilor Berman, do you have anything further?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Hatch?
Thank you, Mayor Doyle. Recognizing that an affirmative vote on my behalf would support an approach that would eliminate access for a hybrid meeting. I'm wondering if, and I thought here that as we approach our next budget cycle, we have, in advance of that, a little bit of time to vet these possibilities. I know, Emily, you've provided us with some options here, which I find helpful and and useful. But to Councilor Berman's point, as I have experienced, conceptually it makes a lot of sense, but the practical application is somewhat challenging. So I would just want to get on the record that I would like the council to, regardless of what the vote is, to, if it's not in favor of a hybrid meeting, that we keep that on our radar screen and we attempt to vet this a little bit further. And perhaps, there are some, maybe not complete hybrid conversion, but some opportunities, whether it's just the council, chambers alone, at least take a step in that direction. I just don't want to, have this fail and that the hybrid meeting component fail and then not readdress it at some point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor McPhail.
I am all set. I was actually going to do the same amendment that Councilor Berman did.
Thank you, Councilor Johnston.
Thank you. First I'd like to just thank staff for putting this together. I think it's before us because we're required to have a policy going forward. We have this. As I said several months ago now, my ultimate goal is some form of hybrid meeting model. What that looks like, as I stated before, is kind of out of my realm or wheelhouse. But ultimately, I think that, as several speakers have commented on, and we've witnessed during the last year and a half or so, public participation went way up. Perhaps some people aren't in favor of that. Me personally, I've always felt, the more comment, whether I agree with them or not, is better an outcome, particularly from a counselor. I like feeling that I was well informed and ultimately made the decision I made based off, that input. I think really dating back to 2011, when I first ran for council unsuccessfully, I've been advocating for, public access, opportunities to engage with your elected officials. I think there's been some significant progress from where it was in 2011. At the time, I think maybe the city had one Facebook page. It was barely used. I remember having early discussions with people at the time, and they kind of, I would say honestly, even laughed at the idea of Facebook being a place for people to get information. And obviously, that's probably the go-to place now, particularly without newspapers. From that, I advocated for, and ultimately council went ahead and added the public comment session to agendas. We created the communications department, which I think we all would agree has been outstanding. So this hybrid model, I think, is really the next step. It's not really futuristic anymore. I remember having those debates in 2015 about whether or not they were going to be allowed, and I understand it at the time the state law didn't allow it, but obviously we've started to change. And so, I think going forward, we need to put some money into this area and address it however it needs to be addressed. We've had some presentations. I don't know exactly the cost associated with it, but to me, there's really, I don't want to say no cost, but ultimately, I think it's a small amount of money when you really look at what we do overall, and giving access to the public is probably the key element that we should be interested in. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Archer.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I too am for the hybrid option, but I want to bring this forward that I'll be voting for the policy as written now with the amendment. And I'm going to explain why. I believe sometimes explanation is necessary. This policy needs to go into effect immediately. This is what I believe. We've had counselors not being able to attend most recently from being sick. I was exposed to COVID, and it was an off week, so that was lucky. But if we have 4 counselors sick and we do not have a policy in place, we cannot have a meeting. This will allow it. So there's a sense of urgency that needs to be placed right now. Again, what some of my fellow counselors have talked about the hybrid option is, again, I'm basing it on a sense of urgency, and I am hoping to discuss this in the future, is at present, I don't even know if we have the staff to handle another task related to it. These are some things that I need to consider, we need to consider. I forecast needing individual cameras and everything. There's a lot of equipment to bring into place. I also teach part-time adjunct or part-time faculty, and I can teach hybrid as well, but that's because it's one teacher. We have 8, and how to do that would be very complicated, and I don't think we've quite defined that yet. So again, we have some considerations of new equipment that may be necessary. How do we have staff do this? We already have one staff member, correct me if I'm wrong, who covers the video, who covers the Facebook, who covers the YouTube and everything like that, and et cetera. I mean, I'm not an expert on the tech side of this. But again, I'm for hybrid in the future, hopefully relatively soon. But at this point in time, we need to get this policy in effect, is my belief, just in case. From an emergency perspective, having 4 counselors out, we're going to not be able to have a meeting because we don't have a policy. So,
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councilor Johnston.
Sorry, I got off rambling and forgot the question that I actually had. So this is for staff. As presented, again, this could just be my own confusion, but as presented, we're either in person or fully hybrid, or could we have a situation where one counselor is sick and they can Zoom in or whatever we want to call it?
Councilor Johnson, you're correct. At this point, this would be either all in person or all remote. So in the case of an emergency, such as 4 counselors becoming sick, the body has the option to continue on by switching to all remote. Similarly with any board and committee, should they, as you're asking here, adopt a similar policy for their board or committee.
All right, thank you. So that's where the hybrid, not just for the public, but all of us, like I said, if one of us was on vacation or whatnot, we have to go to that full hybrid model.
Not full hybrid, but full remote. So everyone would go remote. Hybrid, as Councilor Archer just alluded to, becomes very complicated when you have so many speakers trying to connect with so many in the public. And that's what we've presented in our presentation, the costs associated with implementing that, as long as the potential staffing concerns. So that's why at this point we're offering you what the existing status quo is of either meeting in person or meeting all remote, because it's what we can accomplish with our current resources.
So the figures here takes care of my end goal, right, of the hybrid, or at least gets us in that direction, not maybe every conference room, but at least council chambers?
Yeah, so the numbers you see in the presentation, which is page 19 of your packet, shows the cost for converting this room to be able to do fully hybrid, as well as the ongoing IT and network costs of this room. Page 20 of your packet goes down the equipment cost to outfit each conference room. I think if we did all of the listed conference rooms, it comes to about $20,000.
Okay.
And so those are all the currently foreseen costs, aside from staffing.
Right. All right, thank you. I would just add to the administrator, later on tonight we have a conversation about the use of COVID funds or ARPA funds. Is this something that we could use that for?
I would think so, yes. The conversation we're having tonight is really a presentation on the process. We're not actually doing the process tonight, but Glynis is going to talk about what we've put together as far as what we will be doing to go through that process and allocating those funds.
Thank you.
Any further questions, concerns, comments? Okay. On the main motion as amended, roll call vote, Councilor Archer.
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 to close the public hearing and set final reading. Or excuse me, to adopt policy. Next item on the agenda, page 26 in your packet, is item B, a public hearing, updates to Chapter 118, and that is Councilor Berman.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Staff proposes updates to Chapter 118, Harbor, River, and Waterfront, including changing the oversight of the harbor master position from the Director of Public Works to the City Administrator. Changes have been reviewed by the City Solicitor. I move to open the public hearing.
Motion's been made to open the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Hatch. Any discussion on opening the public hearing? Roll call vote. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion to open the public hearing passes 7-0. Public hearing is now open at 7:31 p.m. Those wishing to speak on this item, updates to Chapter 118, come forward and be heard. Seeing nobody coming forward, Councilor Berman.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to close the public hearing and schedule the final reading. Are we going to meet on February 14th, Mr. Mayor?
The council, that's a good question. It's up to you. At this time, we do have February 14th on the book, but it would be a very small meeting. Some of that items could be pushed until the 28th, which is the recommendation of a consensus of the council.
Mr. Mayor, I move to close the public hearing and schedule the final reading for February 28th, 2022.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Johnston to close the public hearing and set final reading for February 28th, 2022. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, roll call vote. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 to close public hearing and set final reading for February 28th. That brings us to item C, page 45 in your packet, a first reading City Code, Chapter 112, General Assistance Program, adoption of revised MMA General Assistance Ordinance. Councilor Archer.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The City of Saco currently uses the General Assistance Ordinance dated August 2019, which was prepared by Maine Municipal Association. MMA has a new General Assistance Ordinance dated September 2021, which contains revisions and updates to state law. The City of Saco hereby moves to repeal Chapter 112 General Assistance Program Ordinance dated August 2019 and adopt the MMA General Assistance Ordinance dated September 21st, and for the move to set a public hearing for Monday, February 28th, 2022.
Motion's been made by Councilor Archer. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Johnston. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, roll call vote. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Brings us to item D, a first reading of Budget Amendment Number 1. Budget Amendment Number 1, Police Dispatch Consoles, page 180 in your packet. That is Councilor McPhail.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The city's police department radio vendor has informed us that the current radio consoles in dispatch are no longer manufactured or supported. In short, one of them stops working, the city cannot get a replacement, not even a used one. The cost to purchase 3 new consoles is $175,000. Due to the current supply chain delays, staff has requested we expedite this capital item. Funding will come partially from savings in the police department budget and partially from the general fund unassigned fund balance. Be it ordered that the council approve the first reading of Budget Amendment Number 5 and schedule the second and final reading for February 14th, 2022.
February 28th.
Excuse me. Be it ordered that the City Council approve the first reading of Budget Amendment Number 5 and schedule the second and final reading for February 28th, 2022.
Motion's been made by Councilor McPhail. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Johnston. Any discussion? Roll call vote. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Counselor Berman?
Yes.
Counselor Hatch?
Yes.
Counselor McPhail?
Yes.
Counselor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Brings us to item E, one reading to reappropriate TIF funds for Route 1 sidewalk. It is page 182 in your packet. It is signed to Counselor Gunn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Route 1 sidewalk extension has come in over budget. $500,000 was originally approved for the project, but the low bid came in at $690,000. Because the sewer bond will not have any payments in fiscal year 2022, staff recommends reappropriating $150,000 out of the industrial park TIF, originally designated for sewer bond payments for the Route 1 sidewalk extension. This change was set to come forward for the fiscal year 2023 budget process, but needs to be made in fiscal year 2022 when most project expenses will be incurred. Note, TIF funds are budgeted in special revenue funds governed by the development agreement with the state. Therefore, a two-meeting budget approval process is not necessary, as would be the case for general fund budget amendments. Be it ordered that $150,000 currently designated for sewer bond payments in the industrial park TIF be reappropriated to complete the Route 1 sidewalk extension. I move to approve the order.
Motion's been made by Counselor Gunn. Is there a second?
Second?
Second by Counselor Johnston. Any discussion? Counselor Johnston?
Thank you. Just two questions, really just to clarify for the public, but first is, what's the location of this sidewalk as far as from where to where? There's been a lot of discussion over the years about sidewalks out along that area. And then the second one is, why is there no sewer bond payment for FY 2022?
Director Clavette, Director Fox, do you want to come down? Director Fox, I think the sidewalk is the Spring Hill section connecting Funtown and them that was part of the sewer, or that was part of the bond of 2017. Am I correct there?
Yeah, so it goes back to, it connects for the Funtown entrance road out to Spring Hill, Millbrook, KOA. That section has no sidewalk at all right now. So, and the budget, if you look at it, I mean, you're really talking, that $500,000 number was put together in the spring of 2017 during budget time, then went out to voters, and is the last of probably 10 infrastructure projects we accomplished. We had to secure land along the way, and it just wasn't as time sensitive as some of the other bond projects. So we've already secured all the bond funds. They're there if we can make use of TIF funds to get that project done before construction costs. So of the newer cost estimate that we went into bidding with, it actually came in fairly reasonable. This isn't some astronomical bid. It's in line and towards the lower end of some of the pricing we're seeing lately.
Thank you. Director Clavette, can you answer the other question about the sewer bond payment?
Yes, the sewer bond payment that was budgeted in Industrial Park Road was in anticipation of obtaining the bond and any kind of costs incurred. None of the costs for the upcoming bond will be incurred this year, and so there is no need of that money. And you will see us during the budget process coming in with unencumbering the other balance in the other accounts that were held forward toward the bond payment. You will also see in the FY23 earmarking approximately $800,000 toward the new bond payment, and that has been projected for in the FY23 budget, which is about to sit on your desks anytime soon. So the money is not needed in this fiscal year.
Thank you, Director Clavette. Councilor Johnston, did you get your questions answered?
Yes. The only thing I would add, and again, I guess these are somewhat rhetorical questions, but I just wanted it clarified. Today, there is no present plan for a sidewalk past Spring Hill. Is that correct?
Past Spring Hill? No, there is a pending section within the Park North project, but there is no sidewalk planned for the
Today?
city to
Okay. I just wanted that clarified because there are some misconceptions out there that I've had brought to my attention, and the way I always understood it was Funtown to Spring Hill. All right, thank you.
Any further questions? Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Counselor Purdy?
Yes.
Counselor Gunn?
Yes.
Counselor Berman?
Yes.
Counselor Hatch?
Yes.
Counselor McPhail?
Yes.
Counselor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Brings us to item 10, new business. Page 183 is item A, and ARPA prioritization introduction with City Administrator Kainrath and Finance Director Glennis Salas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just open it up as Glennis is walking up. As you know, we have approximately $2 million over 2 years that we have been allocated from the American Rescue Plan Act, and we wanted to involve the council, obviously, in a exercise and a prioritization of how those funds should be spent. And I think, Glennis, we have until 2025, end of the year, to expend those funds. So Glennis has put together a nice process for you guys to engage in as we begin to talk about what we do with that money. So I'll turn it over to Glennis. Thank you.
The joys of technology.
You'll permit me one moment. I haven't done this as often as I did the previous one. There we go. All right. So what we did is we included a PDF version of this exercise in your packet so that you could have an idea of what this would look like. And then after I've presented it to you this evening, you'll be receiving an Excel version that can actually be populated and used. And then we decided, just to sort of streamline the process, that we would distribute this exercise to the counselors individually for you to do on your own time, send your prioritization back to me, and then I would consolidate them and present at a future council meeting. I think tentatively we're thinking the 28th of February. So for a little bit of background for those members of the public that may not be aware of this, ARPA stands for the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. This was passed under the Biden administration. It includes significant stimulus funding to states and municipalities in order to mitigate the impact of COVID-19 on local budgets. The city of Saco was allocated $2.1 million under ARPA through the state of Maine. Essentially, the purpose of this exercise is to allow you, city councilors, to prioritize how the city of Saco, quote unquote, expends these funds. We're doing what some might call a multiple vote sort of prioritization exercise. So in other times and places, maybe you've been given 10 stickers to vote, so you can put them on whatever option you want. In this case, I'm essentially allowing council to take $2 million and spend it among these broad categories. There are a large number of different things which local and state governments are allowed to spend the stimulus funding on. We've sort of taken that broad list and broken it down to topic areas that are most significant for the city of Saco, taking into account council priorities, the pending comp plan, as well as internal need. So we worked together to establish, I think it's 11 funding categories. Let me do a quick count here. 12 categories. And I'm just going to kind of walk through those categories now. The first is broad public health services, COVID-19 response, testing, PPE, mental health and substance use services, as well as general public health services, support, and infrastructure. The second is economic assistance. So really, we're talking about direct support for small businesses or nonprofits in our community that have either acted in support of the community in response to COVID-19 or who may be suffering the economic impacts of this crisis. Housing support. So this encompasses both affordable housing initiatives and or services for the homeless in our community. Healthy childhood, so that's really about childcare, recreation programming, especially in terms of thinking about what the city of Saco does, et cetera. Hazard pay for public sector employees. I know this has been a hot topic in many communities, certainly something that we want to consider as a thank you to our employees for their service over the last couple of years. The wastewater treatment plant, so there was broad funding support for both sewer and water infrastructure. Of course, water infrastructure is maintained by Maine Water, but we do in the city of Saco have our wastewater treatment plant and just issued authorization for bond funding to rebuild that plant in light of climate change and the expanded needs for a larger and stronger treatment plant in our community. A couple of capital funding categories. I mean, of course, capital funding can be very broad. It's very important. Capital funding for right-of-way, so we're talking about roads, parking lots, sidewalks, etc. Capital funding for public safety, so, public safety generally, police department, fire department, facilities improvement, vehicles, communications, equipment, etc. Capital funding for parks and open spaces, and then capital funding for IT infrastructure. So there was a question about what it would cost to do AV improvements in this space in particular to enable hybrid meetings. That would probably fall under capital funding for IT infrastructure. And then environmental sustainability, specifically this was drawn out of the top 5 priorities from the draft comp plan. So thinking about resiliency, fossil fuel reduction in our community, energy efficiency, and waste reduction or recycling improvement. And then finally, smart growth, another major point from the comp plan draft. And that's a lot about improving density in downtown, traffic improvements, studies, etc. So we have created these 12 categories. The cells in yellow are the cells where you can start to kind of spend money. So if, it's important to offset bond issuances for the wastewater treatment plant, you could put $2 million all in there. And at the bottom, it shows what your total expenditure of ARPA funds is and funds remaining. I would encourage counselors, as you think about how you're spending within these categories, not to overthink it or try and build out specific projects in your heads. I am going to be pooling the way that you allocate spending all together, and then that percentage will sort of guide how we allocate funding among projects that are coming up from city staff. The second piece to consider is whether we should expend the funds all up front or over 3 years. We do have until December 31st of 2024 to incur expenses related to ARPA funding. So December 31st, 2024, of course, midway through fiscal year 2025. So we could level out the $2 million over 3 years and enable ongoing projects, or we could plan to really spend the money up front in fiscal year 2023. So again, just kind of putting some numbers in there, not to overthink that, but just to give a general sense of how we should front load or flatline the expenditures over time. This is the same thing, so if we want to do $1 million in year 1 and 500,000 in year 2, it will sum up how you've expended your funds and give you your total remaining at the bottom. In the last section, we have some space for counselors to indicate any capital improvement items specifically that you would like to see considered. We do want to give counselors the opportunity, if you see a need for capital improvement within your wards or based on feedback from your constituents, that we pull that into our capital planning process. So currently, Director Fox is working on collecting capital improvement requests from within the city, and we think it's important for counselors to also be part of sort of the upper part of that funnel of decision making. And so there's space here at the bottom for you to enter those items. Are there any questions about what this looks like?
I just wanted to add real quickly that also, you may have mentioned this, but all these categories and these projects went through a vetting process with staff, the senior staff level. We asked for their suggestions for the areas and projects and anything specific to their department. And we sat down at a staff meeting and solicited all that input and did an exercise on our own to come up with these categories. So they weren't generated out of nowhere. These have been vetted at a senior staff level and presented as the most pressing categories and projects facing the city.
Councilor Berman?
Yeah, thank you. 3 quick questions, I think. One, in the hazard pay category, is that hazard pay going forward, or is that hazard pay going backward? Is that like retroactive pay for the hazards that existed, or would that change pay from this point
My
forward?
understanding is it's hazard pay in general for citizens who came to work in what one might describe as dangerous conditions. I know the range, the time period generally related to ARPA funding goes back roughly to March of 2021. But we would revisit the guidelines regarding how hazard pay is to be distributed and over what period and what amount. If we were to spend the full $2 million, that might be, that we might have to get in the weeds a little bit. I do think, more typically it's a couple of hundred dollars per employee. And so easily justified within whatever time range it is that we're using it.
Gotcha. And for mostly done for work already done during the height of the pandemic or whatever it was. Yeah, the wastewater treatment plant option, that would then offset perhaps the bonding that we just approved? Is that the idea there?
Mm-hmm.
And then third, could you talk a little bit about the relative wisdom and merits of spreading out the expenditures over 3 years versus 1, and how that would impact the city and or the economy?
I would say, as finance director, I'm always one to prefer leveling out expenditures because it provides a larger platform for implementation. I would say that if we were to level out the spending, you probably can't do one sort of very big banner project. You would have to take a few projects on an ongoing basis and route them through the prioritization, but it gives us some flexibility because currently, there is significant inflation in the market. There's significant inflation in construction. There are supply chain issues and challenges. Some are saying that it has to do with, infusion of cash into the economy. So if we hold the money and ride out the current challenges that suppliers are experiencing, we may get a better bang for our buck, so to speak, in the second and third year, as opposed to trying to spend it now when everyone is trying to spend it now. Those are kind of some of the conversations we're having around the wastewater treatment plant as well. How do we time this project so that we're not competing with a large market that has a lot of cash in it right now?
Thank you.
Finance Director Salas, along with Councilor Berman's question, given that the first funding category is public health services for COVID-19 response, including testing and PPE, mental health and substance abuse services, whereas it might make sense to put that funding out because we don't know what will happen with COVID over the next year and a half. So it might make sense for the council as you deliberate, as we move forward with budget, it might make sense to hold on to some of that money over the next 3 years for those purposes. Any further questions? Councilor Hatch?
Thank you, Mayor Doyle. Glennis, this is a great approach. I'm looking forward to engaging in it. You made it as easy as possible. The only issue I didn't hear is whether or not there will be any opportunity for public input, other than each of us respectively trying to have communications to our constituents. So I don't know if that was considered. Maybe it's not in the cards, or how we might go about doing that.
That's an excellent question. To my mind, I consider sort of our whole budget process to be an opportunity for the public to weigh in, and they can weigh in every meeting. If there's interest in gathering some kind of public input, specifically for this prioritization exercise and how we prioritize different topics, that's certainly something I can circle back with City Administrator Kainrath, potentially communications. It's a relatively simple spreadsheet. We could potentially allow the public to use it and potentially collect data that way. I don't see any issue with that.
Well, I can offer you what I think is a fairly simple solution to this, is perhaps simply via our internal communications, Facebook, just announce publicly that this money is now going to be allocated, and if you have any specific interest in allocation, to contact your counselor.
No, I think
and that takes the pressure off the whole process, but gives the public an opportunity to weigh in if they choose to.
Okay, I think that's a great idea. I'll circle back with Director Roy on that.
Any further questions on this item? No further questions, Director Salas, thank you.
Thank you.
Up next on the agenda, page 184 in your packet, item B, Energy Committee update on Community Resiliency Partnership. And I believe we'll be hearing from Director Howard Carter on this issue.
I think you can see from your packet, the Governor's Office of Policy and Innovation has opened up a new grant program. We took this on for the Energy Committee. Basically, you can get anywhere a grant from $5,000 to $50,000 once you have a public forum on what projects are important, and then you folks adopt the resolution. So this has been through the Energy Committee in the January meeting and the February meeting. We established a little ad hoc committee to identify some of these projects. Some that are identified in your packet. I can go through them real quick just for the public. The first one was accelerate the transition to electric vehicles, EVs, in the public places. The second one was plan for community resilience. We've already heard talk about that tonight. The third one would be to modernize buildings, which we're doing with the Energy Committee, but also maybe look at alternative energy sources. And the fourth one would be natural resources, maybe enhance the growing community like the garden we have out and those type of things. Or we've heard from kelp fishing down at Camp Ellis. We've heard a lot of different areas around that thing. So if you folks give this the go-ahead, we'd be looking to have a public workshop on February 16th at 5 o'clock here at City Hall. After that, that goes good, they like the projects, then we'll come back to you probably the 1st of March to adopt that community resolution that's on the back of your packets. And with any questions of that, either Emily or I will be available to answer them.
Any questions on the grant program? Director Carter, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
That brings us to item C, council goals discussion, page 189 in your packet. I believe we're going to get a presentation from Director Clavette.
So while Denise is setting up, just to open this up, as you know, we did a prioritization process. It was at the beginning of 2020 to discuss council goals, focus areas, and priorities. The process at that time seemed to go pretty well. There was positive feedback about the prioritization grid exercise. So we thought we would bring that back this year. Now, as you know, many of these categories are still very important priorities for the city, but we did add 3 new areas that we thought were of significant community interest, as well as priorities for this council. So those are numbers 10, 11, and 12, economic opportunities, schools and infrastructure, and our downtown. So those will be incorporated into this year's exercise, and so it'll work similar to last time. We'll do the exercise. We'll break, I think, for a brief 5 minutes or so to allow us to compile results, and we will come back with our new ranking of priorities facing the community. So, Denise.
All right, please let me know if A, I talk too fast, B, I'm not enunciating enough through a mask, C, if you have any more questions. So we're going to do in your packets, and I also printed out copies so that you'd actually not have to scroll back and forth between, because I think paper sometimes is good. But up on the screen, thank you, Andrew, for putting that up for us, are the 12 goals. Just as a point of clarification, 9 of those you folks had prioritized a couple of years ago, and the 3 are the ones added, and those weren't added like a rabbit out of a hat. Those are 3 that are actually out of the draft comp plan, so that you know that actually are the 3 of the major priorities that are unique in comparison to what the other goals you had. I mean, I'm not saying that some of the comp plan isn't reflected in the first 9. It is, but at least those are 3 that were distinctly separate. And so what we're going to do is a prioritization exercise, and just for those of you who have been through this, excuse my detailed approach, but if you haven't been through this, it's a good learning thing. So first rule, don't overthink it, okay? So when I run this exercise, do not overthink it, because what we're going to be doing is, when you look at 12 items, you may think, I want them all. But if you compare one versus another one, it's very easy to say, I'd rather take care of the downtown versus transparency and engagement site. I'm just picking those two. So I'm going to do 1 versus 2, 1 versus 3, 2 versus 3, and I'm going to ask for a show of hands, and I will keep the tally. And like I said, don't overthink it. Don't look at what your friends, your fellow colleague counselors wanting to do, because the math doesn't lie at the end of the day, so your priorities all will work. So any questions on how we're going to do this? And I kind of try to do this fast because otherwise we'll be here for a little while. Any questions? So I don't think I need to read all of these, but I'm just going to read the summary focus areas so that the audience can actually, the at-home audience and people here can see. Growth and innovation, environmental sustainability, looking at quality service, financial stability, transportation and transit, transparency and engagement, livable community, organizational excellence, governance, economic opportunity, schools and infrastructure, and the downtown. So if somebody else wants to do the math with me and do the little circles, it might not be a bad idea, because sometimes I don't like to be the only one. So here we go. Are we ready? All right. If you had a choice between growth and innovation and environmental sustainability, how many would prefer growth versus environmental sustainability? Hand show for growth. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. So, and how many for environmental sustainability? 1. Okay. So number 1 it is, growth and innovation. If you had to think between growth or quality service, which would you rather work on as a focus area? Growth and innovation? Show of hands for that. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's easy. Okay. If you had a choice between environmental sustainability and quality service, which would you go for? Environmental sustainability? Show of hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so that's goes for that. Environmental sustainability. Next one, if you had a choice between growth and innovation or financial stability, which would you go for? Hand show for growth and innovation. 1. And how many for financial stability? I can talk. All right, there we go. That would be number 4. If you had a choice between environmental sustainability and financial stability, which would you go for? Environmental? Show of hands. We got 1. And financial stability? 1, 2. Okay, so financial stability it is. Next is, if you had a choice between quality service or financial stability, how many for quality service? How many for financial? Financial it is. Next one, growth and innovation or transportation and transit. Show of hands for growth and innovation. 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's that one. All right. Next one is environmental sustainability or transportation and transit. Which would you prefer? Environmental sustainability. Show of hands. All right, that's easy. Next one is quality service. Show of hands for quality service. Huh? Oh. 1, 2, 3. Oh, yeah. 3 versus 5 here. 2 versus 5. Did I say it's environmental and transportation? Okay, there we go. Sorry. There we go. Quality service, show of hands, or transportation and transit? We're doing quality. Show of hands for quality. All right, and show of hands for transportation and transit. All right, now I got this. The next one is financial stability. Show of hands for financial stability as compared to transportation and transit, sorry. So, financial stability. All right, next one is growth and innovation. versus transparency and engagement. So hand show for growth and innovation. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. And the other one is transparency and engagement. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so barely, but number 1 it is. Next one are the choices between environmental sustainability and transparency and engagement. Environmental sustainability. 1, 2. And the choice transparency and engagement. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, transparency. The next one is the choice between quality service and transparency and engagement. Quality service, show of hands. 1. And transparency and engagement. Transparency and engagement it is. Next one is financial stability versus transparency and engagement. How many for financial stability? 1, 2, 3, 4. That's what it is. Next one is transportation and transit versus transparency and engagement. Show of hands for transportation. Transparency and engagement. All right, transparency and engagement it is. All right, the next ones we're going to be comparing against livable community. So growth and innovation versus livable community. How many for growth and innovation? 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, and how many for livable community? 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so that one, I'm going to circle both. That's a tie. We'll get to that later. All right, the next one is a choice between environmental sustainability or livable community. Environmental stability, show of hands. 1. And livable community. All right, livable community it is. Next one is a choice between quality service and livable community. Quality service, show of hands. 1, 2, 3. And livable community, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, livable community it is. Next choice is between financial stability and livable community. Financial stability, show of hands, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's what that one is, okay. Next choice is between transportation and livable community. Choice for transportation, show of hands. Show of hands for livable community. All right. The next choice is between transparency and engagement and livable community. Choice between transparency and engagement. Show of hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And livable community. 1, 2, 3. So, okay, so transparency gets that one. Okay, the next ones are going to be compared to organizational excellence. So between growth and innovation and organizational excellence, how many for growth and innovation? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, growth and innovation it is. Next one is environmental sustainability versus organizational excellence. Environmental, show of hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's it, environmental. Next choice is quality service versus organizational excellence. Quality service. 1, 2, 3, 4. And organizational excellence, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's a tie. All right. Next one is financial stability versus organizational excellence. So financial stability, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. Next one is transportation versus organizational excellence. Transparency. Oops, sorry. Did I do that right? No, transportation, sorry. A trans word, but only one, okay. And how about organizational excellence? All right, so organizational excellence gets it. All right, the next one is transparency and engagement versus organizational excellence. Transparency and engagement. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, that one gets it. And the next choices are livable community versus organizational excellence. Livable community. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right. That gets that one. Okay, so the next ones are going to be comparing against governance. Growth and innovation versus governance. So growth and innovation, show of hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, so growth and innovation gets that one. The next one is environmental sustainability versus governance. Environmental, show of hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, and governance, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's tie. We'll circle that one. Next one is quality service versus governance. And quality service, show of hands, 1. And governance, governance it is. Next ones are financial stability versus governance. How many for financial stability? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so that's that one. The next one is the choice between transparency and engagement and governance. Transparency and engagement. We got 1. And governance. Governance it is. All right, and the next one is choice between 6. Oh, I made a mistake on that one. Okay, so we just compared that. I'll get that done. I missed transportation and transit versus governance. So if you had a choice between transportation and governance, looks like governance side still stayed the same. All right, and the next one's a choice between livable community and governance. Livable community, 1, 2, 3, and governance, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so governance it is. And the next choice is organizational excellence versus governance. Organizational excellence and governance. Governance it is. All right, we're getting there. The next choices are all of the choices versus economic opportunity. And so growth and innovation versus economic opportunity. How many for growth and innovation? 1, 2. And how many for economic opportunity? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right. The next choice is between environmental sustainability and economic opportunity. Environmental sustainability, 1. And economic opportunity. All right. Next one is quality service versus economic opportunity. Quality service, 1. And economic opportunity. All right. Next one is financial stability versus economic opportunity. Financial stability, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And economic opportunity, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that is financial stability. Next one is a comparison between transportation and economic opportunity. How many for transportation? How many for economic opportunity? All righty. And the next one is transparency and engagement versus economic opportunity. Transparency and engagement, 1, 2, 3. And economic opportunity, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Next grouping is livable community versus economic opportunity. How many for livable community? 1, 2. And how many for economic opportunity? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Next one is organizational excellence versus economic opportunity. Organizational excellence, economic opportunity. All right. And the next one is governance versus economic opportunity. Governance, 1, 2. Economic opportunity. All righty. All right, we're down to the last 2. The next ones we're going to compare against our schools and infrastructure. So if you have a choice between growth and innovation and schools and infrastructure, which would it be? Growth and innovation, 1. Schools and infrastructure. All right, schools it is. Next one is environmental sustainability versus schools and infrastructure. Environmental sustainability and schools and infrastructure. All right. Quality service versus schools and infrastructure. Quality service, schools and infrastructure. All righty. Next one is financial stability in schools and infrastructure. Financial stability, 1, 2, 3, 4. And schools and infrastructure, 1, 2, 3, 4. Tie. All right, 5 and 11, which would be transportation versus schools and infrastructure. Transportation, schools and infrastructure, 1, 2, 3. Okay, schools and infrastructure it is. Next grouping is transparency and engagement versus schools and infrastructure. Transparency and engagement, 1, 2. Schools and infrastructure. All right, schools it is. Next one is livable community versus schools and infrastructure. Livable community and schools and infrastructure. All right, schools it is. Next one is organizational excellence in school and infrastructure. Organizational excellence, schools and infrastructure. All right. Next one is governance versus schools and infrastructure. Governance, schools and infrastructure. All right. And next one is economic opportunity versus schools and infrastructure. Economic opportunity, 1, 2, and schools and infrastructure. All right. And here we are. We're down to comparing against the downtown. So growth and innovation versus downtown. How many for growth and innovation? All right. And how many for downtown? 1, 2, 3. Okay, so growth and innovation. Next one is environmental sustainability versus the downtown. Environmental sustainability. 1, 2, and downtown. Downtown it is. Next one is quality service versus downtown. Quality service. And downtown. Downtown it is. Next one is financial stability versus downtown. Financial stability. All right, and downtown. All right, so financial stability gets it. Number 5, transportation transit versus the downtown. Transportation. 1, 2, 3, and downtown. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. And the next one is transparency and engagement versus downtown. Transparency. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And how many for downtown? 1, 2, 3. So transparency gets it. And next one is livable community versus downtown. Livable community, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and downtown. Okay, so that gets it. Next one is organizational excellence versus the downtown. Organizational excellence, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so that gets that one. The next one is governance versus downtown. Governance, 1, 2, 3, 4. And how many for the downtown? 1, 2, 3, 4. So tie. And the next one is economic opportunity versus downtown. Economic opportunity, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, downtown. All right, and the next one is schools and infrastructure versus downtown. Schools and infrastructure, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, we got it. Downtown. We are done. And I will calculate.
At this time, we're going to take a 5-minute break, so it's 8:18. Let's be back by 8:25. Okay, we're back at 8:34.
Thank you for giving us a little more time. It was a little bit more complicated than we thought. And I want to thank Emily for helping with the tallying. So we have just a little bit more work to do before we announce how it shook out. But there was a tie for number 1 and number 2. And so I'm going to have you folks break the tie. And it was a choice between, and we'll do this again, financial stability or schools and infrastructure. If you had to choose between financial stability and schools and infrastructure, it's a tough one. How many would go for the financial stability? All right, that was easy. Okay, and the schools will end up at number 2. Economic opportunity ended up at number 3. Growth and innovation ended up 4th. Governance ended up at 5th. We need you to break a tie between 6 and 7, and here we go. The choices are livable community or transparency and engagement. If you had a choice between livable community, how many for livable community? We've got 1, 2, and the other one is transparency and engagement. All right, so transparency and engagement goes above livable community. And then we have a 3-way tie for the last 2 slots. So I'm going to have you decide among 3 items. So the choices are downtown, environmental sustainability, and organizational excellence. Do you want me to repeat them, or do you have them? Okay, downtown. How many for downtown? 1, 2. How many for environmental sustainability? 1, 2, 3. And how many for organizational excellence? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so yeah, that's what you would do. Yeah, organizational excellence and environmental. Those are the last 2. Okay. Yep, and then, yeah. Which one? You have a choice between environmental sustainability or organizational excellence. How many for environmental sustainability? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's it. And then there you go. So let me repeat the order. Let's do this. Financial was number 1. Schools and infrastructure was number 2. Economic opportunity is 3. Growth and innovation, 4. Governance is 5. Transparency and engagement, 6. Livable communities is 7. Environmental sustainability is 8. And organizational excellence is 9. And there you have it. And we will take care of getting those updated on the website. And thank you for your work. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much. Okay, that completes item C, council goals discussion. Council, you'll see the council goals again on the 28th for adoption. That brings us to item 9, the administrative updates. City Administrator Canrath.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of quick updates. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. Here at the City Hall Auditorium, the city will be hosting an information session on the new senior tax relief program recently enacted. Representatives from the city staff, as well as age-friendly Saco will be on hand to present the new program and answer any questions residents may have. Of course, everyone is welcome and encouraged to attend. Quick update on the Camp Ellis and the ACOE. We did receive another update from the Army Corps. They will again be delayed a few weeks in getting back to us with revised cost estimates and possibly a framework for a PPA, but it is imminent, but the federal government doesn't always work so quickly. So we're still on standby for that, but there is something coming very soon. Lastly, I just wanted to update you on the 2022 budget process and timeline. You see it listed here. I'll just briefly run through it. So starting next week, February 11th, Finance will roll maintenance of effort budgets to the departments. February 21st, that week, departments will meet with myself and Glennis to review their increase requests. Finance will enter the request, receive preliminary approval into Munis during that time. The week of the 28th, departments will review maintenance budgets and make any needed adjustments. March 7th, Finance rolls the department budgets to the city administrator and layers in increases. Tax increase and mill rate are reevaluated using an updated valuation forecast from assessing, and any final adjustments to the budget are made at that time. Then on March 15th, This is a bit of a new piece of the process. We're trying this year to encourage greater collaboration among department heads, but I will be bringing our final budget to a senior staff meeting to present there, and we have had more just collaboration and input as a group this year and trying to put the budget together again and try to increase more collaboration and crossover among departments. So then on March 28th, I'll present the budget to you, the City Council, for consideration. Throughout April, we will have departmental presentations, where directors will come in, as you're familiar with, and do their presentations. And finally, by May 9th, we'll have final passage after your consideration and amendment. So that's our budget process coming right up. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Any questions for City Administrator Kenrath? No questions. Moving on to item 12, council discussion and comment. Any council discussion and comment? Councilor Hatch, then Councilor Johnston. Councilor Hatch.
Thank you, Mayor Doyle. Just a couple of items. The senior tax program, I understand we have some efforts in place to communicate it further. I've just, was expressed to me some concerns that the February 15th deadline was going to be a little tight. I know that we've talked about trying to be a little bit flexible on that, and we're not going to meet again until the 28th. So I was hopeful that we might be able to try to, in this flexibility posture, consider extending that further depending on the feedback that you receive in these upcoming workshops. And I would be an advocate of considering extending that deadline, even though it may mean that we would have to issue rebate checks. Expect that the taxpayers would pay their March bill, but engage in some rebate payments if necessary. I kind of liken it to the extension of the dog licensure. We managed to give some flexibility to dog owners for their licensing process till April 1st. I think a similar consideration might be in line. And then secondly, we heard this evening in public comment, I think it was three different individuals questioning or providing concerns or questions about the ecology school status. And I think it would be fair to the council, because I'd like to know where we are with those things. I haven't heard any responses from the city side, whether it's code enforcement or somebody telling us, what the status of that project is from the city's perspective. So I would simply ask, if possible, in the administrative update for the 28th, that maybe we can get some sort of clarity or update on that, if that would be possible. Thank you.
Yeah, just real quick, as I said in my last admin update, we will be having, it'll be on the 28th now, an update and report back from staff on the left-hand turn lane, the BPI situation, and the dialogue with DOT. So that will be coming on the 28th now, just for information.
Councilor Johnston.
Thank you. I have two items. The first, I think just about everybody that's traveled Main Street recently has noticed the tree cutting on the east side of the island. I will first say that's a part of an approved development. I've started to get comments about what's going on. So there's that. But there was, several years ago, fines levied against a developer for pre-cutting trees before they were approved. And if I remember correctly, there was an escrow account that was created. This was before your time, Mr. Cainrath, and so my question is, I don't know what triggered the expenditure of those funds or how we go about ensuring that trees are replaced, but I just wanted to bring it to the forefront, seeing that it looks like there's a lot of clear cutting occurring presently, which again, I understand it's part of an approved plan, and the public needs to understand that too, but I just want to not lose sight of that $50,000 that's somewhere out there in an escrow. This second thing, several times previously I've brought up or floated the idea of posting all FOIA requests online, whether they be open or closed. The documentation that would be requested would also be posted online. The thought behind this is that it would appear, at least my time on council, that oftentimes a lot of the same requests are being made And if we just had it all in one location so that it was available to all of the public, we probably could save some staff time. Maybe not a lot, but at least some. And I understand there's probably, something associated monetary or staff time with doing that, and that's why I'm bringing it up now. It's part of the budget process. I know that the city of Biddeford does it. I actually quite frequently read them. So I would look to that as a model. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion, council discussion and comment? Okay. City Administrator
Yeah,
Kennedy.
just to Councilor Johnson, on your second point, we'll look into that. On your first point, on Saco Island East, just for the public's information, the developer is moving forward with their approved project that went through the planning board of 24, I think it's 24 townhouse units. They are moving forward with that project, and we'll look into the tree matter also.
Okay, moving on to item 13. Is there a motion to enter executive session?
So moved.
Councilor Gunn, you would have to read the be it ordered piece to actually go into executive session.
Sorry about that. Be it ordered that the City Council enter into executive session pursuant to MRSA Title I, Chapter 13, Subchapter 1, Section 4056, for labor negotiations and city administrator evaluation.
Motion's been made by Councilor Gunn. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor McPhail. Any discussion on going into executive session? Roll call vote to enter executive session. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hanch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 to enter executive session at 8:46. And we'll be up here in the conference, or we'll be downstairs in the conference room. Okay, we'll come out of executive session. Is there a motion to exit executive session?
So moved.
Counselor Hatch, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor McPhail. Discussion on exiting executive session. Roll call. Counselor Archer?
Aye.
Counselor Purdy?
Yes.
Counselor Gunn?
Yes.
Counselor Berman?
Yes.
Counselor Hatch?
Yes.
Counselor McPhail?
Yes.
Counselor Johnston?
Yes.
Passes 7-0 at 10:20. Item 14, is there a report from executive session? Counselor Berman?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I move that we authorize the city administrator to sign the agreement between the City of Saco and Teamsters Local Unit 340 for the Water Resource Recovery Department.
Motion's been made by Counselor Berman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor Hatch. Any discussion? Roll call vote. Counselor Archer?
Aye.
Counselor Purdy?
Yes.
Counselor Gunn?
Yes.
Counselor Berman?
Yes.
Counselor Hatch?
Yes.
Counselor McPhail?
Yes.
Counselor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 to approve the WRRD contract. That brings us to item 15. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Counselor Berman, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor Purdy. Any discussion? Roll call to adjourn. Counselor Archer?
Aye.
Counselor Purdy?
Yes.
Counselor Gunn?
Yes.
Counselor Berman?
Yes.
Counselor Hatch?
Yes.
Counselor McPhail?
Yes.
Counselor Johnston?
Yes.
Adjourn passes 7-0 at 10:21 p.m. Have a wonderful evening, everyone.